Hi there, welcome to Through the Grit with GoGo, my little channel here I've created to talk about my lived experiences and having the grit, the strength, and the perseverance to get through the grit or the messiness of life experiences. So let me go ahead and get going with this episode that's going to be about a time that I really lost it, and it dealt with my children and I. So I here's the deal. This quote I'm never going to forget. You lost when you started yelling, right? You lost when you started yelling. Why was I yelling? And what happened? What else happened during this time that I was yelling? I mean, there's been many times that I was yelling, but something specific happened this time that wasn't so great. And you're going to see me smiling. Sometimes I'll chuckle or giggle or say something that like doesn't relate to the seriousness of things that I will talk about, because somehow I think my sisters do this as well. Sometimes it's a way we learn to cope with some trauma that, or some tough times of our own that later became trauma, or we learned that it was a form of trauma or created trauma or whatever. Anyway, so it's like sometimes in my head I'm thinking of a real situation that can be seriously not good, but then I'm making light of it in my head, or I'm cracking a joke or something to, I think it's a coping mechanism that I use to help me survive the moment and not have a complete breakdown. But let me tell you that this time, that my son actually said you lost when you started yelling, was a very serious time. During this time, my children were about 10, 12, and 15, my son being the youngest, and then I have two daughters. What exactly happened? So I was a single parent, and I still am, but they're grown now, so I don't have to uh, deal with them in the same manner or worry about, like everything that comes with being a parent, where you have to know their schedule, who's going to pick them up, who's going to drop them off, if they're getting fed, um, what they're doing, dealing with their emotions, dealing with your own emotions, medical stuff, paying all the bills, you know, um, and having someone to lean on. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any type of support, no support whatsoever. And I was good with that because I'm like, I can handle it. But the stresses of life, both personally at home and then at work, were really depleting me of my energy. So at work, I was I've been teaching for 25 years. Before I taught, I was here and there, a beach rat, and I was also in the military. I was an Army active reservist, and I went on a couple of tours. But I was single and all of that. I didn't become a mom till I was 27, and then soon after, having a child, I finished college and moved to where I am now, and I became a teacher. And I was like, whatever I do, whatever I've ever done, or whatever I do, I always want to be at the top, right? Like the top three or the top, five sounds too low, but I always want to be at the top of whatever system it is, and whatever the challenge is, I want to take it and I'm going to do my best to do it. So that's what I was doing during this time, um, with work, right? So I'm teaching, I'm doing everything single, as a single parent. My kids are 10, 12, and 15 at the time. And I'm stressed from work. I'm coming home from work on this day, and I remember it, and it happened many times, but I remember this day specifically. So I'm coming home, and I'd been, I'm giving 100% of my energy to kids that don't even belong to me, to the system that, from one day to the next, you die, they replace you. I've seen it happen. Um, and then here I'm coming home, and I'm like, oh, I'd come home at like 6:30, 7:30, 9:30, because I'm doing the regular day stuff, but then I had to stay for tutoring and mandatory club. And I ran the chess club, and I had to stay to do other things, faculty meetings, and then they had technology hours we had to put in. So it was just everything. I was putting all my energy over there, and I'm coming home and I'm like, ugh, the house is going to be a mess. I already know it. So I'm already working myself up about that. Like, I'm going to come home and I'm not going to just get to relax in a nice, clean place. So I'm already upset coming home with my kids, even though I haven't spent any time around them for the day. And I get home, and sure enough, I open the door and you can see the sink and the counter area from the doorway when you walk in. I've been in this house for 25 years, chose the lot, chose the model of the house, and then they built it. And I've been here. Here I am, 25 years later. So anyway, I walk in and I'm like, oh my gosh, whose cups are, by the sink? What's this mess? Why are there dishes in the sink? Whose bag is on the floor? Hello, can anyone hear me? What's on the table? Who left this bowl on the table? So I come in and I'm just yelling and screaming. I think only my son was down here at the moment, but then he went upstairs. My daughters probably they knew I was here because I think I've always like honked the horn, like I'll honk it once or twice. And so they weren't even down here. I'm just yelling from down here. So then I, start, doing the march all the way up the stairs. And sure enough, I get to the first room and it's a hot mess. And I'm like, what the heck? What the fudge is going on here? Y'all aren't cleaning up. Why is it such a mess? It's like we're not pigs, but yet we're living like pigs. And I'm just livid. And I want to say that my son, although we've already discussed this and he like swears um, that he wasn't the person that was right there when I was yelling, it was my daughters. But I remember my daughters kind of scrambling down the hall to the back room, and he was like right there in this first room. And so anyway, I'm yelling, and I want to say he said something like, calm down, or like, why are you yelling? And when he did that, like, I went really beyond the 0 to 70 I was already at, and went all the way to the 100. And I punched the wall. Like, I just punched a hole through the wall. I didn't just punch the wall, like my hand went through the what do you call it, drywall or whatever, the sheetrock. And then I did a front kick, and I kicked a hole through the wall as well. So embarrassing, but it is how I dealt with this situation. Now, mind you, um, my kids at that age, I'm thinking, I'm just so upset with work. I'm upset with them because they are not cleaning up everything. But they're not, they're teens. They're not self-running little adults. They still needed my guidance, my modeling, and my presence. And I wasn't bringing that to them. I was not there. And to top it off, in reflection, I'm thinking about, like, what did it look like? What was I doing? If I really want to look at uh, myself, right? I had a stack of clothes. They're clean, but I don't always put my clothes away. I have mail on the table. I'm still like that, right? And it's part of actually some of the way I deal with stuff from my own life and my situations, whether it be from my home life growing up or my military things that I experienced, and then even in education, especially like um, education, you'd be surprised, but it can cause a lot of trauma for teachers. Um, the way the system is set and the way they carry out things, it's could be traumatic, but that's for another episode. But regardless, I think about, like, my situation at that moment, I'm upset. I just punched the wall. I punched the or kicked the wall, kicked a hole, and I'm like, man, I went overboard here. I stepped over a boundary, and my son, I think like a reaction I had was something like, you see what I did? You see what you made me do? Something like that, like that's so abusive and toxic. Um, but I want to say that's something I might have done or said, because then that's when my son said, as cool as a cucumber, you lost when you started yelling. And he might have said when you started yelling and screaming. And I was like, oh my gosh, doo doo, the steam and everything's coming out my ears. And I'm not having it. I'm still upset that with the situation, that it's not all clean. I'm not thinking like in the reflection that they're not adults, and that this has been the case for a few years now. Like I was depleted of energy. I'd come home. I'm not cleaning up my area and space, but I expect them to have created a good habit of cleaning up and everything. And I'm maybe thinking like in the past, even before me, young kids are cooking and making tortillas and folding clothes and washing them and stuff. And I'm like, God, everything's air conditioned. They have a washer and dryer and everything's great, right? The material parts were there, but the energy, Go-Go's energy wasn't there for them. And so they're falling apart, falling behind in those areas that I'm expecting that they be up here. When I look around in my room, there's a stack of clothes on the ironing board and on my recliner, and there's things that don't even need to be on my dresser even now. It's something I'm working through though, and this whole year has been transformative for me. It's been about 12 years since this incident. But I've been growing slowly through molasses. But they say when you go through something that's painful, it really like, makes you grow fast, right? I guess if you really want to grow, because I think you need to want to grow and then move towards what's going to help you grow. Because I want to say that there are people that want to grow and they don't want to stay stuck, but then they fall into a habit that feels safe for them, whether it's an addiction or toxic behavior, like in this case, um, or case, right? Because I'm yelling and screaming and then leaving things where they're not supposed to be, or you could be avoidant, stuff like, so certain behaviors like that as well, or too needy. Anyway, and then we don't, we like, we want to change, but then we continue to do the things that we've always done because it's safe, because it's familiar. Honestly, with my mess of a mess here and there, for me in this past year that's been transformative, in reflection in the mirror, I realize, this is just my theory, that I don't want to fix all of this, because if I fix it, something else is going to fall apart somewhere else. Or at least that's a thought of mine that came up, at the end of last year, right in the fall. And I'm like, I need to change things within me, right? In reflection to this relationship I was in. I was engaged for 2 years, 2.5 years, and then that was not going right because I was falling into a pattern that I lived in my 20s, and I was recognizing some things that I didn't like, and I was like, hey, we need to change our energies. Our energies are here. I think we're being fearful, and it's not helping us. So either we move, what's our purpose? What do we want to get out of this relationship and grow together? If not, I have to fix me. I have to get in a heart and mind alignment, because I just was not liking where I was, and I wasn't liking our situation. And it was also a time when I noticed conflict with my children, my adult children at the time. So, in all of this, I was like, you know what? I have to really honestly look. And all of this made me think about that time, about this time. And I was like, at that time, no energy. And I was like, where am I pouring all my energy into? I heard this quote. It says, where are you pouring out all your wine, leaving only vinegar for the people you love most? And really, at that time, that's what was happening. Over the last couple of years, I used to be a big drinker back before I had children. When I became a mother and a teacher, I didn't have time for that because, it just depletes your energy in a different way physically and all of that. But the last 2 or 3 years, I kind of like was heading into this zone where it was like, oh, we're going to just hang out and drink all the time. And I didn't like that. I didn't like what I was seeing in the mirror. Like a drink here and there, fine, but not like, you know, a never ending spree, drink or drown. That was like back in Mexico for $5 back in my teen years. We loved it, but it was also a form uh, of dealing and coping with stuff we went through as teens, or trying to suppress or numb out from things we didn't want to. Besides just having a fun time, a lot of us in my friend group and stuff, we were trying to numb out some things we don't want to deal with. And that's the reality. That's how I see it. That's what I've seen with people. And I think like now I'm in my 50s and I'm like, that's not where I need to live. That's not where I want to be. And so my kids and I were having some conflict because they're like, hey, what are you doing? So, I was having to reflect in real time because there was such a strain on our relationship, but it also made me reflect back in time to different times where I'm getting through the grit, and I had grit to get through it, but how much was I moving? It was like these little teeny tiny movements. And in that, I started to read up more about the things I read, right? Like I believe in God, I do, or the universe. I believe in an energy that's been around since forever and will always be around. My son, the same son who I used to call the big shot, I'm like Mr. Big Shot. Um, we call him now, I wonder, like, I'm going to call him the guru or the oracle. But a couple of months ago, he says, who do you think, who is God to you?